bodies of the C are strong, galvanizing does not give rust a chance even on cars older than 2004, in which environmental experiments with painting resulted in side effects. The coating not only quickly becomes cloudy, but also peels off. After restyling, the color became stronger. But here's the electronics, alas. In cars of the first years of production, SAM, Signal Acquisition and Activation Module, signal processing units are famous for their whims. Moreover, moping electronics starts to light bulbs in vain, drains the battery, confuses fuel level sensors, or does not allow you to open and start the car at all. And an illiterate, for example, when the engine is running, disconnecting the battery or lighting up finishes the SAM blocks completely. The FBS 3 access partitioning system is also capable of turning Mercedes into real estate. If the EIS, electron ignition switch, ignition control unit, flies, it's expensive. And a new proprietary transponder key to replace a failed or lost one will have to wait up to a month and a half. So when buying a used Mercedes, do not forget to ask the previous owner for a spare key. If the ABS, stabilization systems, and emergency braking assistance indicators light up on the dashboard, do not panic ahead of time. It may be worth replacing the inexpensive brake light switch under the brake pedal, nicknamed the frog. Worse, if the reason is in the control unit of these systems. Inside the seats, with age, the alignment of adjustment motors can become unusable. The electric drives of the rear head restraints, rear window blinds and mirrors, located behind the door skins, glass and mirror control units worth €130 each do not tolerate dampness. The trunk lock and the pump transfer fuel between the halves gas tank, and the springs of the automatic tailgate lift mechanism are weakened. It is even more unpleasant when the hood limit switch fails. At the same time, the wipers and the windshield washer stop working, and the standard EDW/ATA, anti-theft alarm starts to panic for no reason. But the switch is easy to change. But due to breakdowns of cheap plastic rods of the climate servo drives, most often, at the airflow dampers in the legs, you have to disassemble half of the front panel. In the official service they will ask for €500 for this. And don't forget to read the drain holes under the hood, behind the front fenders, otherwise the battery and fuse box will end up in a swamp. Mercedes has never made frankly bad engines, and pawns are no exception. Gasoline engines can easily run 400,000 kilometers, diesel engines can run even more. The throttle valve block does not live long without regular cleaning. By 80 to 100,000 kilometers, most likely, you will need a V-rib belt tensioner and a mass airflow sensor. By 100 to 120,000 kilometers, the rear support of the power unit, more often, for cars with powerful engines. For engines with a mechanical supercharger, after 40 to 50,000 kilometers, the exhaust gas recirculation valve becomes clogged with soot, and the roots-type compressors themselves last a long time only if the air filter is pedantically replaced at least 30,000 kilometers. Otherwise, the strong noise during operation will become a reason for repair, otherwise a node replacement. It is better for compressors that have exchanged a second 100,000 kilometers to update the special oil that is considered eternal. They have a secret drain plug. What else? The cooling system pump wears out by 120 to 140,000 kilometers. At the same time, the valve cover gasket may leak. It's a shame that soon you will have to buy it again, when replacing, it would seem. Windowy timing chain drive, on gasoline force mill after 150,000 kilometers, on V6, MP2 and M272, and V8, M113, after 180 to 200,000 kilometers, and only on diesel cars less often. There is also a very unpleasant exception, the most problematic 1.8-liter C engine, M271. In instances older than 2005, a weak single-row chain is already stretched to 60 to 80,000 kilometers, and when tapping from the bowels of an unheated engine, it is better to hurry to the service. The worn chain breaks. It is not difficult to guess the consequences. Along the way, they usually change the drive chain of the balancing mechanism. The total repair bill will be €800. Closer to 100,000 kilometers, early M271 engines may have another misfortune. Valves with coke stems lose their mobility. If at high speeds the engine suddenly loses traction and trims at idle, flushing will no longer save, and for replacement, find valves with special grooves on the stems and new valve springs. In the same engine, the crankcase ventilation hose bursts quite often, as evidenced by hissing from under the air filter housing, cold start difficulties and floating idling. and by the mileage of 100,000 kilometers, the generator pulley with an integrated overrunning clutch begins to make noise. Looking for a 6-cylinder engine, we advise you to pay attention to the M112 series, 2.6L and 3.2L. In addition to the general Mercedes features that we talked about a little higher, these engines, like the V8 of the MPZ series, can only be reproached with not too good luck crankcase ventilation system, and as a result in normal oil consumption at the level of 1L/10,000 kilometers, failures of the crankshaft sensor and delamination of the elastic damper of the crankshaft pulley after 60 to 80,000 kilometers. In an advanced case, the dangling pulley begins to gnaw front cover of the engine from the nuances of the series, 3 valves and 2 spark plugs per cylinder, a dozen original handkerchief candles with our fuel, designed for 90,000 kilometers, have to be updated 2 to 3 times more often. It is better not to save money. You risk not only oxygen sensors, but also a converter, ceramic fragments of which can cause trouble in the cylinders. The younger 24-valve V6 engines of the M272 series, 2.5 liters, 3.0 liters, and 3.5 liters, which appeared on the restyled Seshki, are much more capricious. Failures of control units, camshaft position sensors, and wear of the intake manifold flaps are not so bad. Worse, for many, by 80 to 100,000 kilometers, the teeth of the balance shaft sprocket have time to wear out so much that the gas distribution phases go away. When buying, listen to see if the chain rumbles, and find out if the car has been in warranty repair. Otherwise, there is a risk of hitting at least €2,500, the sprocket and shaft change with the removal and disassembly of the motor. Diesels? We will not dissuade, but choose gas stations more carefully and change fuel filters more often. High-pressure pumps with our fuel may not last even 160 to 200,000 kilometers, but cost from €1,000 to €2,000. Accept them. In the risk group, pressure regulators and nozzles, serving 100 to 120,000 kilometers. Otherwise, the biography of the Force OM646 and V6 of the OM642 series is still clean. And diesels of the OM611 and OM612 series, in line 4 and 5, have an ambush generic feature, an unsuccessful conical fastening of nozzles in the cylinder head. Do not be stingy with every maintenance to change the nozzle seals and lubricate the landing site with heat-resistant grease. Otherwise, after 100 to 120,000 kilometers, the result of an unsuccessful attempt to dismantle the stuck injector will be not only a new valve cover, it is removed after the injectors, but also a damaged blockhead. If a completely fresh engine suddenly smokes and loses traction, don't be alarmed and check if the intake manifold damper drive with variable geometry is intact. And if a serviceable turbocharger stops blowing, in a natural way, it wears out no earlier than 200,000 kilometers and costs €1,200, or the recirculation system, EGR, valve that is not clogged with soot hangs. Inspect the seals of the vacuum lines. In the traditional mission, only the good old mechanics with an index of 716, for 10 to 12% of cars, which is content with fresh oil every 100,000 kilometers and only in rare cases requires an age replacement of the backstage mechanism, €250. But only if it is not supplemented by the Sequentronic automatic shifting system. Having met this on cars with 4-cylinder engines, you know that the renewal of the clutch, €300 to €350, after 150 to 180,000 kilometers may coincide with the repair of a failed hydraulic gear shift, €380 for a new pump. However, compared to traditional machines, this is a trifle. The first 5-speed, automatic Mercedes 722.6 with electronic control and torque converter blocking of the 1996 model was installed on many Mercedes, and before the appearance on the 203rd one, he managed to recover from most childhood diseases. The most famous is the destruction of the bushing in the connection of the primary and secondary shafts. But not everyone. On cars of 2000, the box starts to push when switching due to a breakdown of the freewheels. Then one-sided friction discs that appeared in clutch packs in 2001 wear out literally before our eyes during slipping and sharp accelerations, and all pre-styling shops have a risk of ruining the box with antifreeze, which got into its oil through a leaky radiator common with the cooling system. In addition, the automatic transmission became famous for oil leakage through the wiring connector. Often it gets to its EGS control unit, and failures of the input and output shaft speed sensors integrated into a single electronic board. In 2005, The veteran was replaced by a 7-speed 7G Tronic 722.9 series. But in fact, this is the old box 722.6 with a new generation of electronic control and an additional planetary gear set. It turned out to be the new weak link dash. There are no more jams in the transmission, including the all-wheel drive version 4MATIC that appeared in 2002, leaks in gearbox seals and wear on the intermediate propeller shaft support. The bearing changes separately for €40 do not appear on the first 100,000 kilometers. The suspension would be just as strong. The front McPherson of rear-wheel drive cars older than 2004, the Seshki with the 4MATIC, have a different, more durable design, reminded itself of knocking stabilizer struts, €30 each, after 20 to 30,000 kilometers and turned out to be weak with aluminum levers with integrated ball bearings, according to Per Preside, €140 to €150 each. They required replacement after some 30 to 40,000 kilometers, and they're separately changed silent blocks, €25 each, after 40 to 50,000 kilometers. The modified parts began to serve at least 2 to 2.5 times longer, but the upper supports of the front shock absorbers, €65 each, and for restyled cars still rarely live up to 80 to 100,000 kilometers. The shock absorbers themselves, €200 to €250 front and €160 to €180 rear. Tie rod ends, €50 each, and external silent blocks of the lower wishbones of the rear, multi-link. They were also strengthened in 2004, most likely, will last more than 100,000 kilometers. Most of the other parts and assemblies are more enduring, like the steering gear. The rack of the 2004 model with a parametric control valve and a reduced gear ratio is no exception. Knocking on bumps is not a cause for concern, but the mechanism is disposable. The leaky one will have to be changed. So is it worth buying a used 203 Mercedes-Benz? With reliability, he has unenviable affairs. The cost of owning an unsuccessful copy of the first years of production can cause misunderstanding even among wealthy owners. The best options are from post-styling cars with mechanics and gasoline 6s and 112 with a volume of 2.6 liters or a 2.2-liter turbo diesel. Of course, the Seshka loses a lot in price, but all the same, at the age of 4 and 5, it will cost from 700,000 to ₹1,000,000 rubles. But for the same money you can find a fresh, trouble-free Camry. Although Toyota, of course, is not Mercedes.